Is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Welcome to the Department of Family and Support Services Tax Prep Chicago RFP. I am Mark L. Sanders II, Deputy Commissioner of Workforce and Human Services for the Chicago Department of Family and Support Services. I am joined by my colleague Thomas Mose, who will share some housekeeping updates.
Hi, everyone. My name's Tom Mose. I'm with the Department of Family Support Services. I actually work in a different division than Mark, but I also help with running the GoToWebinar application for the entire department. And so I'm just going to be here today to provide any technical assistance. As you can see on the screen with this slide, due to the volume of participants, everyone has been placed on mute. If you have questions, since you're on mute, you have a dashboard to your right-hand side, and we want you to type in your questions via the question box, and we'll respond to the questions after going through the slides. And please use the question box to notify us of any technical issues. And with that, I'll pass it back to Mark so he can welcome and introduce another colleague and go over the agenda for you today. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Again, I'm Mark Sanders with DFSS. I'm also joined by our Senior Policy Analyst, Julia Talbot, and she will be helping us later on in the webinar. As we begin the purpose of the webinar, we'll go through the background. We'll go over information about the scope and the program description, the selection criteria, the timeline, technical assistance for applicants and e-procurement, and we will go over any questions. Next slide. Purpose. The goal of Tax Prep Chicago is to increase financial stability among low-income Chicagoans by maximizing the number that file state and federal income taxes, receive all the credits for which they are eligible, and the full refund amount they are owed. The department seeks to contract with an organization that helps achieve this goal by, 1, offering free, accessible federal and state tax return preparation and filing services, and 2, conducting an outreach campaign that increases awareness of and connections to these benefits and other mainstream banking and financial stability services. Respondents must be an approved IRS volunteer income tax assistance provider and demonstrate the ability to provide both in-person and virtual services throughout the city of Chicago. Next slide. The Department of Family and Support Services mission is working with community partners. We connect Chicago residents and families to resources that build stability, support their well-being, and empower them to thrive. Our priorities are to deliver and support high-quality, innovative, and comprehensive services that empower clients to thrive. Collaborate with community partners, sister agencies, and public officials on programs and policies that improve Chicagoans' lives and advance systemic change. Inform the public of resources available to them through DFSS and its community partners. Steward DFSS's resources responsibly and effectively. Next slide. The goal of Tax Prep Chicago is to increase financial stability among low-income Chicagoans by increasing the number of residents who maximize the financial benefits of income tax filings, particularly the Earned Income Tax Credit. This is accomplished by providing free, accessible tax preparation and filing services and deploying an outreach campaign to increase awareness of and connections to these services and other mainstream banking and financial stability services. Next slide. The income eligibility guidelines are established by the IRS for each tax year and vary depending on filing status and if children are claimed. This information can be found at the website. Next slide. The program requirements are As previously mentioned, respondents must be a currently approved IRS VITA provider. By default, they would be a nonprofit organization as evidenced by incorporation in the state of Illinois and must have federal 501c3 tax exempt designation. Overall fiscal soundness is required as evidenced by the financial history and record of the respondent, as well as the most recent audited financial statements. Respondents must secure additional funding to support the program and ensure that funds may be expended prior to reimbursement. Selected respondents must fulfill necessary staffing to execute the program, including but not limited to program oversight, program management, volunteer recruitment, IT data oversight, site management, intake, and tax preparation and filing. All staff and volunteers must complete an IRS-approved training, and select respondents must provide services to residents within the city of Chicago. Next slide. Program requirements. The respondent will provide free tax preparation services, both in person and virtual, provide technical assistance, support to clients accessing virtual services, provide services to at least 3,000 clients, provide services throughout the tax season from January through tax day, partner with at least 6 sites to provide in-person and drop-off services at locations accessible by car and public transportation within the city of Chicago. Site hours may vary by site, but must accommodate clients outside of the traditional work schedule, including weekends. Services may be appointment-based, depending upon space and any relevant public health regulations at the time. Offer virtual tax filing options. Implement secure methods for obtaining, reviewing, and storing client documents. Provide services to people with limited English proficiency. Provide services to people with physical disabilities. Make referrals to additional mainstream banking and financial stability services. Provide a mechanism for client feedback on program satisfaction and quality. Additionally, the respondent is encouraged to propose any service or method that it believes is unique or particularly beneficial for low-income taxpayers. Next slide. Recruitment. Respondents must develop and implement public relations approaches for participant recruitment that leverage strategic partnerships and target geographic areas that's specified by DFSS. This includes, but is not limited to, direct mailings, flyers, social media, and distribution of informational material. Develop and execute a plan for volunteer recruitment. Manage the taxprepchicago.org website. Develop outreach materials in English, Spanish, Mandarin, and Polish languages. Next slide. Outreach campaign. Demonstrate partnerships with organizations that provide mainstream banking and financial stability and strategies for connecting clients to these services. In partnership with stakeholders, develop and implement a public information campaign to increase awareness of benefits of income tax filing, mainstream banking, and other financial stability programs, and connect clients to these services. Next slide. DFSS will monitor and track a set of performance indicators that may include, but are not limited to, the number of tax returns filed for Chicago residents each year through in-person, drop-off, and virtual access points, the number of Chicagoans assessing the EITC tax credit each year, the dollar value of refunds received by Chicago residents served, the dollar value of the tax credit and any other tax credit received by Chicago residents served, the estimate of commercial tax preparation fees saved by Chicago residents served, household characteristics by race, income, and geography to ensure equitable distribution of services. Next slide. To monitor and recognize intermediate progress toward the above performance indicators, DFSS also intends to track output metrics that may include, but are not limited to, the number of in-person and drop-off tax sites located in the city of Chicago, how clients are served, and how they learn of and where they were referred from for pre-tax preparation services. Clients refer to additional mainstream banking and financial stability services. In addition to the performance indicators and output metrics listed above, DFSS encourages respondents to propose additional indicators and metrics, including those that demonstrate early success and are indicative of participants' progress. Next slide. The respondent must clearly define services to be provided. This is a part of the strength of the selection criteria. The respondent must clearly define the services to be provided directly or through partnerships with other agencies that are appropriate to addressing the needs of and achieving desired outcomes for the target population. The respondent must demonstrate clear understanding of the target population and their needs and challenges. The respondent must have an effective approach to identifying and recruiting program participants. Next slide. When thinking about program performance, thinking about the program performance outcomes and quality, the selection criteria being used will be the respondent must demonstrate evidence of strong past performance against desired outcome goals and performance metrics. The respondent must have relevant systems and processes needed to track and report performance on program outcomes. They must have experience using data to inform and improve its services or practices. They must also have relevant systems and processes needed to collect and store key participant and performance data. Next slide. Organizational capacity. The respondent must have qualified staff responsible for program oversight and management. The respondent must have adequate systems and processes to support monitoring program expenditures and fiscal controls. They must have adequate human resources to hire, maintain, and retain staff and manage and retain staff and volunteers. The respondent must have expertise working with the target population and have relevant capabilities or infrastructure needed to serve this group. The respondent must have the respondent's organization must reflect and engage the diverse people of the community it serves. I'll read that again. The respondent must reflect and engage the diverse people of the community it serves. Next slide. Selection criteria for the reasonable cost, budget justification, and the leverage of funds. The respondent must demonstrate the fiscal capacity to implement the proposed program, must leverage other funds and in-kind contributions to support total program and administrative costs. The respondent must demonstrate reasonable implementation costs and funding requests relative to its financial and human resources. The proposed budget must support the proposed scope of work or work plan. Next slide. There are some attachments that are required. There must be proof of VITA certification attached, position descriptions, and resumes for all the staff. Be prepared to upload these documents as well as the articles of incorporation and any amended articles of incorporation. The IRS affirmation letter for not-for-profit agencies only. This letter must be dated within 60 days of submittal. The central contractor registration, you must provide a copy of the entity overview page. You can find this on the sam.gov website. The DUNS number, the certificate of good standing letter with the state of Illinois. Next slide. . Important dates. We are today at the pre-proposal webinar, March 23rd, 2021. Applications are due April 29, 2021 at 12 p.m. The contract start date is July 1, 2021. Next slide. Again, the applications are due on April 29, 2021 at 12 noon. And now I will transition over to my colleague, Julia.
Thank you, Mark. So usually at this time, I am going to go into, well, first of all, my name is Julia Talbot. I work to help people with the RFPs. So I am in charge of making sure the RFP process for DFSS goes as smoothly as possible. And that includes going through a number of aspects about making an application into the city's e-procurement site, which is how we get our applications. As you've noticed, Mark has already told you twice in two contiguous slides that the due date for this application is April 29th, 2021 at 12 o'clock noon. The reason that we're going to tell you that so many times is because we really are quite firm on that deadline. If you submit a late application, it will not be accepted really under any circumstances. The only way we are allowed to accept an application is through the RFP process, and we would have to reissue the entire RFP, which probably is not fair to whoever did get it in on time. So we're really, I like to be very firm and emphatic about how much that deadline sticks. It's 12 o'clock. If you're working on your application and all of a sudden, and you're coming up on that 12 o'clock hour, and all of a sudden your application is like whisked away, and it's like your computer, there's something the matter with your computer. That was the application closing, and you did not make it in there. So I'm gonna go through in the next slide some sort of guidance on how to make an application in e-procurement. We're gonna go through two step-by-step screenshots of two of the things that you'll probably need to do to make an application. One is accept an amendment. The other is just walking you through the submission process, because it's not one of these sort of like click once and you're done experiences, unfortunately. So let's go to the next slide and we can kind of get started on this. So if you have never done business with the City of Chicago, you're going to need to register into the iSupplier or e-procurement network, which is as soon as possible. For new applicants, it will take you fill out a very brief form with your PIN number and a bunch of stuff. There will be then you will get an email back that shows you how to access the iSupplier website to kind of start the process of setting up an account in iSupplier. iSupplier is the thing that we refer to that manages the suppliers. E-procurement is the website or the platform that manages the procurement aspects of it, but we kind of use those two terms interchangeably. As an applicant, you will have to have an account in iSupplier, but you use your iSupplier account to make bids or submit applications for RFPs in e-procurement. As part of our application or the application process, you'll see there is a PDF RFP document in the application on e-procurement. That document has narratives and selection criteria, which Mark has just sort of gone through. And in the application, there are application questions, which are referred to as requirements in the e-procurement environment. Those are all connected. When we write an RFP, we start with our scope, we write our scope, and then we align our selection criteria with that scope so that we're making sure that our selection criteria is relevant to the things that we're asking for in the scope. And then we look at our application questions, and we make sure that those application questions are aligned with the scope and with the selection criteria. And from there, our evaluations fall out of all of those things. So if you are looking for information, if you're looking for guidance on how to answer an application question, on what do we really mean, I always tell people first, look at that RFP document. I know it's a dense document. Sometimes they're a little They are dense, they're daunting, they might be maybe not the most interesting thing you've ever read, but in the end of it all, that is the best place to start if you have a question about what are we looking for, what do we mean, what do we need. It's in that scope document. Of course, Mark and myself, to a lesser extent, are available. You can email us, you can call us, and you can certainly call me or email me about iSupplier e-procurement type questions, and we'll get into that later. But we're here to give you guidance and to help you decide whether or not this is a great opportunity for your organization, but also to figure out, like, to help illuminate what are sometimes very technical programs. So when you're starting your application, please look at the narrative, look at the application questions, review the selection criteria, and understand that they're all connected. They are all interconnected. They aren't three like random things. When you go into start your application, you're going to see an application question and then kind of a text box that you fill out. Within that text box, there's a 4,000 character limit, and that includes punctuation and spaces. And so every response, you have 4,000 characters in which to provide an answer, and that's about 2/3 of a single spaced page. E-procurement is not going to count those 4,000 characters, so if you go over, you will not get any kind of a warning, or you will not really know. What it will do is it just cuts off your answer. And because of that, and because when you submit an application, you don't really get a file copy. It will offer you a PDF of your application, but it won't offer you a file copy. I really encourage people to develop their application questions in a word processing document, do those character counts in that context, and then cut and paste it into the application, just so that you have all of your good verbiage and all of your good ideas, in a document that you can use for later. E-procurement works best in the Internet Explorer browser. It was built on that platform, to work with that browser. That being said, it works fine in Safari, it works fine in Firefox, it works fine in Chrome. If you are having problems with e-procurement, though, in terms of you just find like it's glitching on you or whatever, it's going to work best in Internet Explorer, and so I would suggest trying that. This is the e-procurement website has been up for about 3 or 4 years now, and I have to say that it is not. The bugs have been fixed. I knock on wood, it has never crashed. And so when people call and they are having computer problems, they're having software problems, they're getting kicked out a lot, all of these, they're having issues with e-procurement, it probably, unfortunately, has something to do with the software on your machine not being up to date, or in some ways not jiving with e-procurement. And so for that reason, and just in general for the whole, generally speaking, making an application in an RFP, I tell people, give yourself time, as you see on the slide, start early, save often. If you let e-procurement sit for about 10 minutes or more, it will probably time out and kick you out. But just save often, start early on this application. Don't use, and this is like a pro tip that I have learned the hard way, don't use the back button on your browser in the e-procurement environment. Everything in e-procurement that's in blue generally leads to something else that you can navigate through the website, or through the platform, using the blue buttons, basically. If you use the back browser, what's going to happen is it will go back, but it will stop saving whatever work you're using. And then when you go to save it, it will kick you out and have not saved what you did since you used the back browser button, which I personally have found to be a frustrating experience. So I really don't recommend it. Let's go to the next slide. So in here, to submit a single RFP, applicants will need to set up unique users, a unique user account in iSupplier. And sometimes we have RFPs that you might want to make 2 applications for. This is not the case with tax prep. So this is kind of just, tuck it away for next time, right? Now you can submit your application early in the e-procurement environment. And so if you're worried about getting an application into us, what you can do is submit that application as many times, and you can pull it back and amend it as many times as you want until the due date of April 29th, 2021 at 12 noon. So if you're like, hey, I think I'm done, I'm not quite sure, but I really am worried about this deadline, hit submit, and it will just sit there, and then we don't look at anything until after the application has closed. And then if you need to pull it back and you're like, oh, I need to upload a resume, I need to do this, that's perfectly fine. And that would mean that, at least your application has been submitted. And I would have to say, better to have submitted an incomplete application than no application at all if you want to go for a contract. We will talk about this in the slides, but avoid the rush and possible mishaps by submitting early and planning your submission taking 30 to 60 minutes. So that means that you really need to stop writing your RFP questions or your application questions. You need to stop uploading, and you need to be able to clear your mind and just focus on submitting for, like by 11:30, if you're going down to the wire, the day the application is due, because the submission process sometimes it's not always straightforward, especially if you're new to the system. It is not, and it takes a minute. It's not that the system necessarily is going to be slow, but it does tell you, it checks your work. It tells you need to do X, Y, or Z. As I have said a number of times, late applications will not be accepted. And then here we go. If you have my email address, you have my phone number. I try to get back to people within 24 hours if you have a question. There's also an e-procurement helpline. It's 312-744-4357 or 744-HELP. You can also, on subsequent slides, there's also a customer support email. If you have a really technical question, I will probably refer you to the helpline because they have a higher level of access in e-procurement than I do. You can also email them with your technical questions. Just remember that the hotline operates during business hours only, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. If you call me or text me over, call or email me over the weekend, chances are I probably will get back to you because I want you to get the help that you need as quickly as possible. As a person who has written grants and who writes these things, I do have, compassion for the fact that you're working on a weekend for this. Can we go to the next slide? So here's the customer support at cityofchicago.org that I was telling you about. There's the helpline. If you are a person that learns well through videos, PowerPoints, etc., there's a lot of training materials and documents and videos, step-by-step instructions on how to do more of the basic stuff in e-procurement. That's at this training material, this website. The other thing is if you're looking for more DFSS opportunities to apply to, you should go to the DFSS webpage. It's always in the alerts section of our website. That's where I post all the RFPs. Under alerts, they also get posted under funding opportunities, but alerts is kind of like right in the middle of the page. It's easier to see, so I put them both places. Let's go to the next slide. So here we go. And so now I'm going to go to the technical aspects of my presentation. We're going to talk about how to accept an amendment, and then we're going to talk about how to do your submission. So you need to know how to accept an amendment because generally speaking, we do an amendment for all of our RFPs. When we are done with this presentation, you will ask your questions, and then we're going to take those questions and and any corrections that we need to make in the RFP itself, and we're going to put those into an amendment document and post it in e-procurement. And you have to accept the amendment if you're going to be able to make your application. So if you've already started an application, you're going to go in and it will ask you to accept an amendment. If you haven't yet started an application, when you go to start one, it will ask you, the first thing it's going to do pretty much is going to say, accept the amendment before you start the application. And so let's go through the step-by-step on how you do that. You'll see that the city is very concerned that you understand what you are signing up for in terms of the accepting the amendment. We put the amendment out for your information, and you are held responsible for the information that is shared in that amendment. Amendments are important because they can tell us about change. They tell you about changes in the program, and they give you more information from the webinar. But for instance, if we were to change the date, the due date, that would be an amendment. And obviously, if we never would change, we would never make the due date earlier. But in the end of it all, like if you were like, oh, I thought it was due on May 1st, and we're like, oh no, yeah, it was, but now we're changing it to May 5th, and you then came back and were like, well, I submitted on May 1st, but I really could have used the extra time, but I didn't know. It's like, well, it was in the amendment, you accepted the amendment, and you are, we don't know why you didn't see that due date because you accepted the amendment, theoretically read it. So just here we go. The RFP you've are interested in has been amended. And so to start the application, you're going to go to the upper, everything in e-procurement kind of happens on the upper or lower right-hand side in terms of activities. So you're going to go to this actions bar. You're going to hit create quote, and that's going to get you, that's actually how you would start your application. But because your application has been amended, you're going to get the next screen. So here we're going to go, and we're going to, you know, as I was saying, the amendment is you're going to acknowledge and accept. And so here, when you're starting your application, you're accepting the amendment. If you click on the details in the documents, the document is going to, this document number is the RFQ or RFP number. It's going to take you to a screen where it tells you a little bit about what, you know, there's like I do a one sentence about what the amendment's about. It also shows, and it shows you the application and all the associated documents for you to review. If you want to look for when you go for number 2, to the little eyeglasses here, that's, if you click on that, you're going to actually pull up the amendment itself. And then you'll see in this middle underneath the title, you go to, that's where that one sentence, you know, this amendment addendum is to remind applicants that this CD, you know, it says basically it's going to be like, it has the questions of the webinar, or we changed the date. It gives you a kind of a little one sentence about that. When you're done reviewing the changes, you're done scrolling through and you've familiarized yourself with what the changes are, you're going to hit 3. See, it's up, you'll see it's both on the bottom and the top of that screenshot where you acknowledge the amendment. And after you acknowledge the amendment, you're indicating that you're aware of the changes that were made. It's going to take you to this screen. So let's go to the next screen. Great. So here we go. Now you're going to accept that you acknowledge the amendment. So you're going to hit the little tiny checkbox. I don't know why in e-procurement they make every checkbox like microscopic, but they do. That's kind of their design scheme, I guess. So you're going to check this box that says you accept the terms and conditions of the RFQ and also acknowledge the changes made to the RFQ in the amendment document. And then you're going to hit acknowledge, the acknowledge button on the upper right-hand side, and that will take you to step 4, where you're going to hit yes to indicate that you confirm your acknowledgement of the amendment. So you've already, you know, you've acknowledged, and now you're confirming as part of your acceptance. It's a very thorough acceptance that we like to do here. So here you're going to hit the yes, and that will take you to the next screen. And that's a confirmation that you acknowledged the amendment. So you know, it says basically you're confirming your acknowledgement and acceptance of the amendment. You'll hit yes to that. And now you will be achieving sort of like some sort of procurement nirvana. You probably won't be procurement reincarnated if that's a thing. You're going to hit another tiny box down here saying that you have read and accepted the terms and conditions. And then you're going to accept that. So this is, you accept the terms and conditions of acknowledging and accepting the amendment. I think you're going to hit accept. You'll see here it's on the top and the bottom again. And so you'll accept that amendment, or you'll accept your terms and conditions, and that will take you, I believe, to the final step. Oh, yeah, that was the final step after you have accepted. There's so many different little things that you have to click on this process, but you know, we're very, very adamant that we want you to read the amendment and understand that you're being held responsible for the information held in it. So now that you've kind of gone to a higher procurement level with your accepting of an amendment, let's talk about how you're going to submit the application. As I indicated, it's not just a lovely hit send and it's gone. It's not quite as thorough as the amendment process, but you do have to go through a few steps. So let's talk about, you've finished, you've accepted the amendment, first of all, you've done a brilliant job with your application. You're a day ahead of time. The due date isn't for a whole 24 hours. You're like just doing, you're like, you know, a gold star applicant in terms of the process. Let's go to the next screen and let's start the how to submit an application. So when you're ready to submit, you're going to save your draft one last time because, you know, you can't save too often. And then you're going to click continue. And let's go to the next screen. So when you hit continue and you're trying to submit, what eProcurement now is going to do is it's going to really do like a little scan of your whole RFP document, of your whole application for you. And then it's going to give you, if it has questions, because eProcurement kind of uses judgy language sometimes, they're going to say, instead of saying like we have a question, it's going to be like it's an error. A lot of times, so I have an example here and we're going to go through 2 common errors that people get. But a lot of times, like when you go through this and you hit that continue button and it does that scan, don't be alarmed if you get like 4 errors. It's not a big deal. It's just that's how eProcurement is going to is communicating stuff that it's worried about your application. So so we'll go to the next slide and we'll talk about the 2 most common errors. So here the error usually, you know, look, the error message usually directs to something left undone in the application. So in this case, it says that you must quote on at least 1 line in the RFQ. That doesn't make sense to me intuitively, but like, look, oh, if you look right below there, there's this little tab that says lines. So sometimes, you know, if you get this error message and it's just like, I don't really understand what they're asking for, look on the screen. And the key word in the error message I have discovered usually is you can see a word, that word somewhere in the screen, and that will kind of guide you as to where the error is. Or you can call me, or you can call the eProcurement helpline and we will help you out with this. But this is why you don't want to do that at like 11:45 because everybody else is calling you then. So that's why you want to do this early, so that you get the help you need if you need help at all. So in this case, we wanted you to, what they're saying here is that the lines tab had not been filled out. Now in the eProcurement environment, lines is where we go to set up a budget. Once the application has been awarded and goes to contract, we actually don't use the lines as part of our application or our evaluation. But you might get this error message that says, please fill out a line. So you click on the tab, you put like 1 or some kind of placeholder number in all of the lines. And it's sort of a hoop that you're jumping through in this case. The lines has nothing to do, it is not part of the evaluation that, you know, we use. We ask you for an uploaded budget. Sometimes we ask you for a price proposal. Those things are what we're going to use to do our evaluation, but it will, you know, eProcurement is still going to be like, I want you to do some lines. So that is that error message. So let's go to the next slide. And then in this case, the error message is a quote value is required for requirement first name. And so in this case, the error is about an unanswered question in the application, which is the requirements section. And the quote value refers to your, you know, to your, in this case, missing answer. So you see here, this is the error. And then I have circled where the keywords show up in the screen. Because even if it doesn't, you know, even if you're like, what's a quote value? If you look around, you will find the answer. So in this case, they basically are like, you didn't answer the question, what's your first name? And so then you would go in, you would type in your first name, you would save, and then and go about your business. So that's 2 very common errors that we get, or that you might get as part of your submission. And this is why we say, please give yourself 30 to 60 minutes to go through the submission process, because it's very rare that you hit that continue button. It's just like, oh, great, we love you, bye. You know, it's usually something. You want to give yourself time to resolve these things. And sometimes the error language isn't particularly intuitive and will take you a minute to figure out what it's needed. So let's go to the next slide. So at this point, your application is free from errors and you're ready to proceed and submit. And so at this point, when you hit continue, it will put your application into the review and submit phase, which you can see because it says review and submit in the upper right-hand corner on that bar. And when you go, so you're going to review and submit. In this phase, basically what you're going to be able to do is you're going to see your entire application in eProcurement. So let's go to the next slide. And it's going to give you the opportunity to review all your data and confirm that it's accurate. You're going to be able to see if your attachments. You're going to see all of your responses. So this is the sort of, it's like one huge long scroll of screen. It hasn't broken it out into pages. So let's go to the next slide and I'll show you this. This is the top of the screen, and then if you scroll all the way down, you see where you are going to provide electronic signature. You're going to do your signature. You're going to put in the name, your name. You're going to put in your title, and then after that, you're going to click the box. If you click the box before you put in your name and title, you get an error message, and it wants you to put in your name and then your title and then click the box. So just do that, and then you're going to. Then you can see it's sort of cut off, but over here it says printable view. If you want to get a PDF of your application so that you know what you said, you have a record of the application. Once you submit an eProcurement, you're not going to be able to access that application. It becomes ours, and you can't see it. And so, if you haven't you want to get that printable view and have that PDF just for your own point of reference. So after you click the box, you're going to hit validate or save draft, validate, and that's going to take you to the next screen. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there it is. You hit submit. It's just it was hidden from this. I couldn't get the signature part and the submit in the same box. So anyway, so don't hit validate, or you can hit save draft, hit printable view because you really want that, and then hit submit. And once you hit submit, you're going to get a confirmation screen. And so the eProcurement system is going to send you a confirmation email to the email that's associated with the application within 24 hours of your submission. If you want me to confirm, just give me a call or email me that you have submitted, and I will call you back probably before 24 hours because I know that you want it. People want to have just that extra confirmation. That's totally understandable. But that confirmation screen is what you're going to get to know that your application has been submitted. If you're trying to make an application and you don't get that screen and you're feeling frustrated, do give me a call. I can walk you through this. It's not a problem. And that kind of concludes what I have to say about the eProcurement environment. It gives you kind of a baseline operation. So now we're going to open the floor up to questions, either about the program aspects of the RFP, the TaxPex program, or if you have any eProcurement eProcurement questions. As Tom talked about in the beginning of this presentation, we like to have you write all of the questions into your question box, and then we will read them and answer them. All of the questions that are asked become part of the amendment from the webinar, and we can't just thank you enough for your interest in this program. So let's see if there are any questions, if anybody has any questions. Okay, so here we have 2 questions. Thank you. I have heard a few different definitions of virtual programs. Can you elaborate on DFSS's definition of a virtual program? Mark, you want to answer that?
For our intents and purposes, we want to be mindful of the restrictions that have been placed on indoor services or in-person services. So we want to be clear that the organization is providing options for residents to give that service in accommodating the restrictions that are placed on us currently. We don't know what they will look like as we proceed, but we want to make sure that the organization is able to provide services both in person and virtually.
Great. And then the other question was, can we get a copy of the slides? And yes, the webinar, a link to this webinar is posted on the DFSS website. So if you want to relive the beauty and go onto our YouTube channel and listen to the webinar again and see the slides, that link will be posted on the DFSS website as soon as I can get at it. So within probably the next 28 to 48 hours or 24 to 48 hours. Then the slides also will be published as part of the amendment that we do. So that's, and hopefully we'll have that out within the next week. So are there any other questions? So just so that you know, like if you don't have questions now, but you find that you have questions later, for programmatic stuff, you can talk or email or call Mark. And for non-programmatic questions, please email or call me or the e-procurement helpline. Thank you guys so much for coming and attending this webinar today. We really are looking forward to seeing your applications. This is such an important program for the city, and you would be providing such a vital service to Chicago residents that we can't thank you enough for your interest. Mark, do you have anything you want to add?
That was well said. Thank you.
So,
Nothing to add.
okay. Great. So I think that we're going to conclude and have a wonderful day. Stay out of the rain.